Hey guys, I'm gonna talk about models and why I see models as a nowadays subculture. Before doing that, I wanna address the fact that a model is genderless word. If you say a model, it could be a male model or a female model, but if you say model, it's genderless. But that's for later. I first want to start about why I think models are a subculture and how they are behaving. Why I think models are a subculture, even though it's work related, obvious, but they still make impact in the world. And they did it when the first supermodel was titled, but they are still doing it now. And there are so many areas that are very well known and still making impact on the industries nowadays. And that's why I found it a subculture because the models are making impact in fashion design, in merchandising, and nowadays, especially through Instagram, also the way of how social media is used is very interesting, and that's why for me models are also a subculture. To know about the future, you need to know your history. So I'm gonna give you some history lessons about models areas, and how what is happening at the moment and what will happen in the future, because that's like so interesting. And if it's gonna be interesting, because okay, let's start at the beginning where it all started, where the term supermodel got its first entry in the world. That was in '94 with the model Lisa Fossengraffe from Sweden, and at that time there were not many models around. So, but she was the one who earned 50% more than the rest of the models around. And in that time, like 15 years later, it was like all like just a few rare models who got the title. And then the real first phase came in, and of course, London was involved, and it's literally called the London phase. It's in 1960 with like the flower power, and Twiggy was one of the leaders of the fresh faced models of that time. Twiggy is the one who also made androgynous the start in the androgynous scene. So every model after that was compared to her if it was slightly androgynous. And what the big impact was of Twiggy on the social market was she really from passing to from a model she became a celebrity. She was not only a model, but she became a much more a bigger person where people were looking up against, and she was selling merchandise of herself. Her name became a brand from that point on. That was like the goal of all the models around there. People wanted to become charismatic enough to be seen by the bigger public and make a brand of their name. And that's like such a big thing in the whole industry. The moment people wanted to make a name of themselves, people wanted to look like you, and they wanted to join your subculture, and they want to become like the star. People want to look like you. They're gonna buy your merchandise. They're gonna talk about the same stuff. If you say in an interview you like a specific band, your fans, your groupies, will also become a subculture of yourself. And that's Twiggy started that one in 1960. I do. That was like the big shift of when also brands started to notice that models are not only models, but they could also be a group of people that could attract buyers to their products. Now like the big shift came in about models are became really trendsetters, that they are like early adapters, but also the main inspiration of the bigger crowd, like the consumers, to adapt and to copy. So they became real popular big brands of themselves. We're now shifting to the golden age. Now, one of my favorite ones, because these are the models who really made an impact, and everything they did or wore was iconic. The golden age and also like the big five. And these models formed a squad, let's say it in a new term, a squad, their own little elite group that everybody wanted to be in. Everybody started dressing like them, speaking like them, wearing makeup like them. everything they did became iconic and desirable. The big five, of course, is Naomi Campbell, Cindy Crawford, Linda Evangelista, Claudia Schiffer, and Christine Hurlington. These are the names, and I'm gonna focus on two models of them, Naomi Campbell and Cindy Crawford, because for me, they are the persons who really made an impact on the fashion industry with their look, with their way of walking, their way of talking, their appearance. Cindy Crawford, she really became a brand of herself. Her name, Cindy Crawford, is a brand on it. In the time she became big, she obviously has a mole above her lip, one of the seven. Then she got a contract with the biggest beauty brand at the moment, Revlon. And everybody started to copy. Everybody started to also draw a mole on their face. And that also became a really big hype. And people were talking about it. They were talking about her as an American beauty, as a representative of a female they wanted to become. So people who admired her and also started to think like her, they also wanted to be a female femme fatale strong lady who knew how to handle herself and how to handle the world. Everything Cindy Crawford did was iconic. From the Pepsi advertisement with the cut off jeans, that was an instant hit. People really wanted to become these five females, and that's really interesting to see that five females had such a big saying in the world of fashion at that time, and they still do. They recently had a big comeback at the Versace show. Nobody was talking about the show. It was a very good show, but the iconic five back together was way more important. So they made a name out of themselves and left a big stamp on how fashion was received in that time. Of course, Naomi Campbell. Let's talk about her. She was the first black model ever who graced the cover of Vogue, which was late. Diversity is still a big problem in the model industry. But Naomi Campbell made such finally the first step in the diversity process. And that's where I'm going to talk about later, obvious, because diversity, bring it on. Naomi Campbell was the step in the direction of equality of all kinds of races, ethnicities in the fashion industry. Even though it took really long to step up the game of the fashion industry to embrace more diversity, but she was the start of it. What took really long? That also included the colored community, which was so big. Everybody wanted to embody Naomi Campbell, and she is the master of the wig. Her hair, I don't know how many inches, we do centimeters, were like a very big thing. And also in the black community, the hair of Naomi Campbell became such a strong communication language because she loosen up the world of fashion with her skin color. What these women had all in common was the trend and the feeling they also wanted to give out to everybody there. Be a strong individual woman. Be powerful, know what you're standing for. So started to give a political meaning to their spokesperson wise, because they are models, celebrities, and they also representative of female world. So they become really strong individuals that are looked up to, but also imitated. Their names became trends, and what they were doing also became trends. Those are obvious the five big names. The rest, what was walking on the catwalk, were really similar to those beautiful girls already. But one thing was still really interesting. Naomi Campbell was the only colored model on the runway all the time. They got some Latina girls, but not that many. Most of the girls were still tall, white girls. Time started to shift. The new area came across that required younger models, thinner models, like white, thin, really thin models. That also, the area is also known as the heroin chick, you know what you. So not really healthy girls in a way. And it's everything the Big Five was not. Like the Big Five was voluptuous and boobies, but these girls were wide, thin, size zero, as thin as possible. That was also, of course, with the whole economics and that kind of stuff. The representative of this shift in the model industry was Kate Moss, obvious. A young, fresh-faced, size zero or -1, better to say, was like charming the whole industry. Not only the industry, everybody around there was obsessed with her and about her figure. And from that moment on, the stick figure, the zero or the -1 figure, became the rule. Every model should become that. Then also the time, like the all Russian and Ukrainian models, all blank canvases, and that was the start of the newest phase. Blank canvases, sober, really thin. What happened in the model industry was, for a lot of teenage girls and even older girls, also the ideal message. So in that year, there were never that many anorexic cases on the surface than in those years when the models were so stick thin. The stick thin model figures carried on, and it's still important in time. We're getting closer to the nowadays. At that moment, the shift came in. Also, you got more commercial models, like the Victoria's Secret show came up, like sexy, voluptuous models, just like the big five we had. And then next to that, you got the more high fashion models that were prancing the catwalk and doing the commercials for the big brand. For the high fashion models, it was still very plain and still so little of diversity. For example, in the Victoria's Secret show in 2009, so not that long ago, 8 years, was the first Asian model who ever walked the show. The Now Time, which is all about the it girl. It's about Cara Delevingne. She was the first one who really changed it. She was a bit shorter, but she came from famous parents. Her brows are incredibly big. That changed the whole beauty standard of eyebrows. Instead of plucking them, like, people let them grow out of nowhere, which was a really interesting change. But also, people were getting more accepting about different kind of beauties. Instead of the all blonde, blue-eyed, Glamazonian female with leg for days, it was also fine to have a bit more interesting faces. And the first one who really broke through was Molly Bear. She looked like an alien, was 2 meters and really tall modeling industry, and she looked like an alien, which was amazingly interesting because it was not normal and not conventional. That is what's happening right now. Diversity is getting more accepted. Still not everywhere. Last season there was still Balenciaga cast with only white females. But diversity is coming through finally. Natural hair is also accepted more, so the fro is getting on the catwalk. But it is getting so slow. What is also happening now, gender is shift, where I started about the modeling thing, that a model is a genderless word. There are transgenders going on in the fashion industry, and it's also now more accepted, and people also are coming out as a transgender to show their support to their community, because that's important, because transgenders are still not accepted in this world. I also talked to one of my friends, Steady Quinleven. She's an American model, and I had a short conversation about this with her. She recently came out as a transgender, not for her own goodwill, but to make it more acceptable. For me, was a really interesting principle, because she also wanted to encourage other people to be open about it and not be afraid for it, because it's just a person. I found that really an inspiring message she brought with her. This was more about what was happening on the catwalk. What is happening outside there is the social media. Social media is becoming such a big thing. We're the millennials. We are the kids of the internet. And the internet is bringing us a career right now. Bloggers, vloggers, influencers, and pretty faces who are doing it well on Instagram are walking catwalks at the moment. Instead of real models getting jobs, the social media influencers get small sponsorship that are for companies really conventional, because they are cheap, they are more easy, and they will also have like a big followers. And that's also how new models get casted, about how many followers they have. And for example, the sisters Hadid, Gigi, and Bella, they have such a big reach of followers. Everybody wants to use them because of their followers, and not because they are beautiful, of course, but also because they have such a wide spread of a message of a company, and that's really interesting. What we're seeing nowadays on the catwalk is a diversity of a lot. Kiki Willems is short bangs, Fernanda has like pink hair, Ruth Bell looks more like a guy than as a girl. It's all more accepting and more open to everything. And for example, Dolce Gabbana had a whole cast of famous influencers walking down the catwalk for them, which is also an interesting shift. Uh, but we're getting more accepted. There is more diversity on the catwalk, but one thing is still lacking, and that's body diversity. And that's what I found a really interesting thing. These couple of years are really some big fighters for it, but it's still like fashion sticks to the old principle of the super slender girl, obvious, and that's interesting. And I think what will happen in the future, if I see like the time zones, I think it will be a lot about commercial girls. And hopefully, instead of in 5 years, it will be a lot about commercial girls and guys from the internet who are used for campaigns and for runway shows. And maybe in 10 years, there won't be a runway show anymore. But I have the feeling that in a few years, the term model will become model. Another few years, like 20 years, that a model, if you say model, then you can talk about a human person instead of labeling it with a gender on it. And that's something I hope will happen. And that you say model and that it can be the whole range, that you don't, if you say model, it's not just a white girl, it could be a black guy, it could be no gender, no race, and nothing. But that's a far future. The close future is all about the it people, about who are big on social media, who got the most followers, the most likes, and we will probably see that more on the catwalk than other beauties.